another short break as usual, because my memory cards are shit, and I need to get better ones. But we finished talking about Yakupov Yakupov and just the Oilers in general, and now we're going to talk about the GM, because there's a huge change for them. Don't know if it's going to be good or bad yet. We haven't seen him really do a whole lot of work. Hopefully after this whole summer and even up to Christmas, we see what he's going to be like and what he's going to bring to the table. So, who's that, Curtis?
Well, that is Craig MacTavish. Yes, the former coach of the Edmonton Oilers has come back and will be the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, succeeding Steve Tambellini, who was let go early on in April. I liked Craig MacTavish as a head coach. I was maybe one of the only ones that actually really appreciated the job he did. I think in the last year I found that, maybe he would be alright to let go.
Yeah.
And I started agreeing with my buddies about, Craig MacTavish, he's not very, he needs to be gone. And, at the time it sounded really good. But I think you look at the team and the way it performed the year after he was let go. They brought in Pat Quinn as the new head coach. They brought in Tom Renney as the associate coach.
Yeah.
And you saw what happened. They finished 30th in the NHL, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
I think Craig MacTavish has the ability to bring out the best out of anybody. And I think that was maybe except Dustin Pennant. But basically, he was given, the players he was given in that Stanley Cup run back in 2006, besides maybe Chris Pronger, there wasn't too many of the players that were at that elite level. I think Ales Hemsky was close. I think Sergei Samsonov was close. Other than that, everybody was starting to get really old, or they were at a very high level, but they weren't at an elite level.
Yeah.
And I think the way that he was able to bring that team together, and if it wasn't for Dwayne Rolson getting knocked out of Game 1, I think they would have won the Stanley Cup that year.
Yep.
And I think if Craig MacTavish can bring that to the table as the GM of the Edmonton Oilers, I think we're in good shape. However, I was a little disappointed that they did not decide to go outside the organization and say to somebody who hasn't been with the Oilers, I think the best way to evaluate things is to get a bunch of different sides of things.
Yep.
I think the problem with the Oilers right now is everybody has the same sort of evaluation process as everybody else. And they'll tell you differently. But I think when you're around each other for so long and there's nothing new to bring to the table, and you get all the same people, you get the Kevin Lowe's and the Steve Tambellinis and the Craig MacTavishes and all these other guys, you start to see the game differently. You start to see you start to see why they like them so much, but you don't see why you shouldn't like them that much. Yep. And I think that's what the Oilers miss. And I think when you're pro scouting, I think a good example of that right now is Eric Boulanger. He was a guy that was brought in to be a fourth line, third line centerman, and he just he's been hurt. He's been he didn't even come to the final meeting for the season, at the end of the season when they brought in all the players for their year-end press conferences. He wasn't one of those guys to show up, and I think that just tells you that he, the character that he brought wasn't maybe there, and obviously what he was supposed to bring was maybe a bit more offense than he has brought, and I think that was maybe just a little bit misjudgment on what his face-offs were. His face-offs were above 50, about 54 to 56% for about 4 or 5 years consistently, which looks really good. But I think you could have had another side to that and say, but there could be some issues here, there could be issues there. There was a reason he was on so many teams in that amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So I think they took that a little bit too seriously. He's not the only example. There were a bunch of others, but I like Craig McTavish. I think he'll do a good job. Maybe he's not the best man for the job. Let's say that. And I hope he proves everybody in oil country wrong when they start saying we should have just fired Kevin Lowe. Be over with it. I think they should have fired Kevin Lowe. But
in realistic, you kind of even though you kind of have to see if it's going to be the lower level guys before it's your head guy. But we all know that it's probably Kevin Lowe. He's been around.
I think the way you look at they've had now it'll be with Craig McTavish, Pat Quinn, Tom Rennie, and now Ralph Kruger. They will have they've had 4 coaches in the last 5 years, with Tom Rennie being the only one to have successive years before Craig McTavish went on that big run.
Yeah.
But I think when Mark Spector of Sportsnet and of the team 1260 in Edmonton, he started saying, well, I think Craig McTavish fires the coach because I think they need a new change. The head coach is not the problem. The last thing we need is a coach to be changed. Look, the players are not good enough. The bottom 6 forwards are not good enough. The defense are not good enough. The goaltending as a whole is not good enough.
Yeah.
They need stability everywhere. They need more depth in their goaltending. They need more depth in their forwards. They need more depth in their defense. That is where you have to start. And I think Craig McTavish, the first thing I think he has to do with Oscar Klefbom, with Justin Schultz, with Martin Marincin, with Marty Gernat of the Edmonton Oil Kings, with David Musil of the Edmonton Oil Kings, there's 5 big defensemen that could be part of your future soon. Go get a top 2 defenseman to mentor him. Look at what happened in Minnesota. Jonas Brodin, 19-year-old defenseman. A lot of teams probably wouldn't last the whole season. Probably be a healthy scratch. Might even be down in the minors. With Ryan Suter there, he has been a huge mentor for him. And I don't know if that was a huge plan for them, but I think for the Oilers, it's got to be because I think Justin Schultz was just a little worn down at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I think Oscar Klefbom, he's going to come in, but he's not going to be the player. Everybody has huge hype for him, but you got to limit your standards. I don't think Klefbom is going to be as good as everybody thinks. I think he'll probably be a healthy scratch a couple of times just because he's young, he's inexperienced, and I think they need somebody to lead him on. I don't think Jeff Petrie's the guy. I don't think Ladislav Schmid's the guy. Maybe Ladislav Schmid for Oscar Klefbom, but for some of these other guys that have more offensive ability, I think you need somebody else.
So if you could pick a defenseman, just one of the top in the NHL right now, like some of these big name defensemen, who would you pick to be the mentor?
Well,
without taking too much thought.
Of course, there's a lot of constraints in that, but I think the one guy that you look at right now that signed a big contract in the off season last year, and a guy he would eat a lot of your cap, and it probably isn't financially viable for the Oilers. But a guy like Shea Weber, a guy who would be a minutes eater. He would eat up minutes. He would not be relied upon as much for his offensive abilities because of Hall, Nugent Hopkins. Remember, he's playing with the Nashville Predators. They don't have very many guys. I think he could be a guy. He moves the puck well. He's a big guy. He can provide leadership on the back end. He's a character guy. He'd be the perfect fit. Unfortunately, with his financial commitments for the next 15 years, it'll be a tough sell for anybody. Plus, we need some of that money to service Nugent Hopkins, Everly, Hall, Bob Schultz. So it's in a perfect world. That's what I would say. But so let's maybe move on. You have a secret player you want to maybe talk about?
I have a secret player that I kind of brought up to Curtis a little bit ago. But he is actually a big name in the NHL right now. Well, not really right now, but over the last probably 3-4 years, he has been known by just about everyone. And I was going to say Miikka Kiprusoff. He is a phenomenal goalie. He is great in those basic final stands, where it's those shootouts that mean those final points that the team needs to get. And I always found that Miikka Kiprusoff was there. He could fight through that pressure, he could fight through that battle, and he could get that point, that extra point that the Calgary Flames needed. And watching their games this year, I didn't see a whole lot of Mika Kiprusoff.
Well, I think the part of it is Mika Kiprusoff is getting older. I think he could have, you don't know, he might have been injured a little bit. He could have been, I think with the way the team was going, I think he could have seen where it was going and might not have had it in him. And I'm not saying he's a quitter. I'm just saying that with, it's human nature to look at your team and look at your surroundings. And you look at them and say, you know what, maybe this team isn't good enough. And, when you get down a goal or two, you just kind of pack it in and say,
yeah,
that's what it is.
See,
I'm not saying
team's not going to put in for you.
Well,
why should you?
Exactly. It's not that you're a bad person. It doesn't make you any less than a person. I do it when I play soccer at times too. If I know the team in front of me is hard pressed to score goals,
yep.
It's tough for me to say, okay, it's only one. It's like, oh my God, it's one. We're never going to get it back.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that is why he did it, but I will say though, Mika Kiprusoff was the reason the Calgary Flames rebuild did not start 2 years ago.
Yep.
And he kept this. If it wasn't for him, this team would be nowhere. You can talk about Jerome McGinley as much as you can. They played at Joey McDonald this season. He did okay. Not a starting goaltender in this league. I think Mika Kiprusoff is a class act. If he retires, it's going to be huge shoes to fill for the Flames. And he just he was a thorn in the side of the Oilers for the longest time.
Yeah.
So if he retires, I'm happy. But
it's going to be sad to see him go.
Well,
not for the sense that we're Oilers fans, but just for the sense that he's a great goalie. And when you see great goalies like that, yeah, you want to see them kind of retire in their prime.
Yeah.
But you also want to see those great goalies go on and do even better things.
Yeah. Evgeny Nabokov, Vesa Toskala, Mika Kiprusoff. The three goaltenders that the San Jose Sharks had. I remember back when I used to have NHL 2004 for PC. Those were the three goaltenders that San Jose had on the roster. This was before the trade deadline and all that stuff. Those were the three. They ended up trading one to the Calgary, and who knew that he was going to be the guy that sent them to the playoffs to get them there and almost won them a Stanley Cup. Probably should have won him a Stanley Cup because there was a goal that should have been a goal, but
yeah,
we won't talk about that. But definitely a good goaltender, and he's definitely probably one of the best that Calgary's ever had. You can look at Mike Vernon. He was probably the only other one that compares, and I don't think he's even close. I think Kiprusoff trumps them all.
Yeah.
So we're going to take one last quick break. We'll come back with a quick chat about the Blue Jays that have been in existence so far this season. And maybe we'll chat about the WHL playoffs as well, the Edmonton Oil Kings in action.
And even though we have a quick minute before we go, I kind of put it out to my Twitter to see if anybody had any sports questions or just any questions at all that they wanted us to answer. And one of my friends, well, not really, it's a person I know on Twitter said, "Where do babies come from?" I'm not going to go into it. If you don't know where babies come from,
Aww.
you should probably go back to grade 7 health class. Come on. We're not going to be talking about that stuff. Everybody knows where the babies come from. We don't really have anything else to say to that. Do you have anything else to say to that other than you should know where babies come from?
No, that's all I have. I'm pretty much good.
Yeah, and plus it's too awkward about dudes talking about where babies come from. So, yeah, we'll just take a quick break now.
You put it inside her.
Do you?
You put it inside her.
No.
But I don't like cider.
uh,
On that note, we'll be right back.
That was actually a good one.
I can't take credit for it. I saw it on